Hey there folks, welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And here's a review that's been long in coming, the newest album from Vallendusk, titled Homeward Path. So here's one of my favorite things about this semi-professional music critic thing, the research to it. There's very few things that really grab my attention more than venturing into certain genres and slowly beginning to untangle the more intricate elements or finding bands that might be related to what you want to cover. After all, if I want to be considered remotely credible when I talk about an act, you need to know the context and when it was created. As such, when I was preparing to cover Deaf Heaven's New Bermuda a month or so back, I knew that I had to hear more black metal than just Sunbather to build a workable opinion. So I went deeper. I found acts like Wolves in the Throne Room and In the Woods that I actually argue I'd like more. So I figured if I could find more black metal that brushed up against progressive metal or atmospheric folk, I'd probably find a lot of acts that would run straight up my alley. So when I heard positive buzz coming about the sophomore record from Indonesian black metal act Vallendusk, thanks a lot for that, Mike Seatown, I figured I'd dig up their debut album Black Clouds Gathering and explore it. I'm definitely glad I did. Like most Indonesian black metal acts, the guitar work is ridiculously strong, but I also found a lot to like in the untamed and bleak poetry to match with the huge melodies, with imagery that wasn't quite visceral or incredibly dark, but set a fantastically creepy mood to play it all off. In other words, it definitely earned all the critical acclaim it had received. And as such, I was definitely curious to dig into their newest album, their sophomore album that was dropped a couple months back called Homeward Path. So what do we get? Honestly, a little bit of a letdown. And the more I listen through this album, the more I get the impression that there were some really good ideas behind Homeward Path and expanding Vallendusk's black metal sound, but the execution compromises some of their strongest instrumental elements. Now, that's not to say this album is bad. It's far from it. There's still a strong foundation that's really hard to compromise. These guys can play. But I do feel a little bit disappointed in this, honestly, especially considering how strong their debut was. In other words, it's a very good album, but not really a great one. So, okay, what the hell happened here? Well, let's first consider the instrumentation and production. And Vallendusk's biggest strength, the guitar work. In terms of structuring an explosive, fast-picked tremolo sound, one of the biggest ways Vallendusk was able to stand out on Black Clouds Gathering is able to place that killer guitar work right at the front of the mix, letting their huge melodies and letting the rhythm guitar support it. It was dynamic, it could play out the blast beat drum work incredibly well, and it gave the songs memorable hooks that could then stand in contrast to acoustic segments that highlighted that same skill. And when I heard that Vallendusk was going to be bringing in some organ keyboards in order to support that, I figured it'd be a natural fit, if not better, especially if the playing was just as good and they can get some melodic interplay going on. Unfortunately, that doesn't really happen. Sure, the rhythm guitar is still chugging away relentlessly, but when the organ does creep in, the lone warble can replace the fast-picked tremolo melodies, not supplement them. That takes all the momentum and fire that a lot of these guitar lines have and dampens it significantly within the mix. It's nowhere near as impressive as the slower acoustic moments, which rarely ever get the space to breathe and build real contrast on this album. It doesn't help matters that so many of these melody lines are tuned back in favor of the riffs or the blast beats, which would be fine if it didn't feel like so many of these riffs are swamped out in their own feedback or smothered under a layer of frenetic cymbals. And sure, the melodies are pretty damn great when they move to the forefront, but I guarantee you're gonna hear the same riffs each song at least 3 times, with nary a solo in sight. It's a really bizarre choice from a compositional standpoint, given how strong the guitar work is that they wouldn't want to highlight any virtuoso moments to give these songs more distinctive flavor, especially considering how long some of these songs are. And on that note, for how rigid some of the melodic structures can seem, you'd think that they managed to end their tracks better than just dropping into a pretty common fade out, which happens a lot more often than it really should. Now, you know what? If all of this sounds harsh, I should definitely make it very clear that Vallendusk's strengths in the melodic composition typically make up for the weaknesses in a big way. Again, this is not a bad album. The melodic hooks that anchor Earth Serpent and Ring of Fire are damn near excellent. And in the latter case, built some great crescendos erupting out of the smoky fuzz and the darker tones. And hell, Eyes of the Watcher actually takes a folk metal-esque opening progression echoed in the organ and actually gives the acoustic moments a little bit more room to breathe and features one of the most satisfying endings of any song on this album. And when the guitar work, it really can shine like the clarion tones that cut through on Grains of Horizon. There's a really sticky melody on the back half of the song that breaks into some great textured acoustic guitar and leads to this really smoky outro I really liked. Or take the melody that comes through in the midsection of Windswept Plain, it just sounds beautiful to me. It's a shame that it doesn't carry over consistently to songs like the Wayfarers, where the guitar tone could have really used some meat to cut through that mist. And this ties into our second major issue, the vocal production. No, not the scream vocals. They're visceral, they're really powerful, they sound just fine where they are in the mix, but the appearance of clean vocals across a couple tracks. And it really does come out of nowhere, and they're so badly layered, it's ridiculous. Either completely swamped out and inaudible, or moved more to the forefront and lacking any sort of real without presence or multi-tracking. I get having contrast, but they stand out in probably the worst possible way and don't lend any coherency to these tracks. They really don't add much, and this ties into the lyrics and the themes. Now, following in the wake of Black Cloud's gathering, Vallendusk choose to return to their well of nature-themed, borderline primal poetry. Not so much animalistic, but observing the wild nature of the world around us. And the funny thing is that outside of the carnage on Windswept Plain, or the grimness of Earth Serpent and the lyrics of focusing on death, the lyrics stray much closer to power metal and folk metal, especially on the reminiscence to Legends Past, on the Wayfarers, and the more cosmic touch to the Anchors or Eyes of the Watcher. Where I feel Vallendusk's lyrics hit the strongest for me is when they can cultivate that feeling of encroaching doom to match up with the instrumentation, cataclysms that will afflict humanity. They only serve to emphasize how small we really are in the vastness of space. That's why Ring of Fire, literally referring to Pacific volcanoes and the comet of grains of horizon, have so much impact for me. Forces of nature so powerful that they almost defy understanding in their wake of destruction, with the late of the ghosts of the stars taking eons to reach us and reflect upon a dying world. And yet, all the while, we're trying to find false paths of transcendence, move beyond that, instead of becoming one with the far larger, far more real forces of nature around us. You know what? That's a pretty potent theme, all things considered, and yet, this album really isn't as interested in contemplating or digging into that more melancholic, tranquil feeling as it is just pummeling everything in its path to rubble. And sure, I get the reason why that's happening, but it does lack a little bit of subtlety, at least for me, especially when you're going for more of that atmospheric sound. You kind of want some of those quieter moments. In short, look, I get what Vallendusk were trying to do with this album, experimenting with more keyboards and more technical composition, and yet I can't say it works nearly as well. The organ tones don't have the same momentum or power to match the tremolo picking, the melodies aren't given the looseness to evolve or really expand, and there's no real solos, and I find myself looking for a sense of contrast or crescendo that doesn't really materialize to lend the abstract subject matter more gravitas to it. Coupled with a series of production missteps, we have what could have been a fantastic black metal project dropped to just being a merely pretty good one, which is getting a 7 out of 10 from me. But again, I am going to recommend it, especially if you have fondness for more technical melodic construction. One thing's for damn sure, I still got a lot more black metal to investigate before the end of this year, and Vallendusk, they delivered a solid, incredibly well-played example, so definitely check this out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, or any other albums coming out that you want me to take a look at, I will try to get to them before the end of the year. Till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.